This is the Supernote A5X2, arguably the most uncompromising E-Ink note-taking tablet available today. Built around an incredibly robust E-Ink Carta 1300 Mobius display with a crisp 300 ppi resolution. It features a ceramic-tipped pen that never wears down and a self-healing screen protector for a paper-like writing feel. It also boasts a sleek modular design that's optimized for sustainability, and at the heart of it all are the thoughtfully crafted note-taking features powered by a perhaps too well-hidden Android 11 operating system. Meanwhile, uniquely tailored accessories like the Half-Folio secured with hooks or the transparent Lamy pen raise the question, is this level of customization really better? After almost 2 years of delays, the A5X2 launched in late 2024 and sold out in less than a day across many regions, with others facing delayed shipping. So let's find out if the Supernote A5X2 or Manta lives up to its hype, and if good things really do come to those who wait, and whether the hefty price tag of 730 euros or around $600 is truly warranted. When holding it in my hands for the first time, I was actually pleasantly surprised at how good the Supernote Manta felt, despite the full plastic build. Retta, the company behind the Supernote brand, did a great job with the matte, slightly soft to the touch white material on the backside, and also with the variable thickness. The tablet is thinner on the edges and thicker in the center, which creates the illusion that the A5X2 is thinner than it actually is. In numbers, 3.6mm on the sides and 6mm in the center. And with a weight of 380 grams, it's also very lightweight when not using the Half-Folio. One part of the back cover can be removed, and underneath you will find the covered mainboard and battery, and the microSD card slot if you want to expand the roughly 24 gigs of usable internal storage. The idea behind the mainboard and battery being accessible is to being able to swap them, but we'll have to see how that turns out once the parts are available. The 4 rubber feet on the back provide a secure grip on the desk, so no sliding around, but there's a catch. The Half-Folio only covers the screen when it's closed, also covers the rubber feet when it's open. And even though the cover itself provides a bit of friction, it's not as good as the rubber feet, which are essentially pointless in real-world use as a consequence. And while the metal hooks that secure the folio in the center feel robust, the outer hooks are just for alignment and can be pulled out a bit when applying a little force, which isn't pretty. But more importantly, detaching the folio is unnecessarily fiddly, and it makes me wish Retta had just used the magnetic attachment as other companies do. With the reMarkable Paper Pro or Kindle Scribe, you can simply pull the magnetic cover off and place the tablet on a desk with the rubber feet working as intended. A much simpler and more convenient solution. And since the Half-Folio isn't easy to detach, you are more or less stuck with the overall weight of 480 grams of the A5X2 and Folio combo, which isn't really that lightweight anymore, which, by the way, is also 13 grams heavier than advertised. Just a small discrepancy, but still worth noting. There is also the question of how well the unprotected white back of the device will hold up over time, especially when frequently transported. So all of that put together, I honestly find the Half-Folio a bit underwhelming, as it doesn't really improve on existing solutions and actually makes handling more complicated as a consequence. What I like much more is the USB-C connector position at the top, because it means you can keep using the device even when battery is low and just plug it in without the cable being in the way. What's missing is a fingerprint sensor, unfortunately. That's something we find on a growing number of books devices, which improves convenience significantly when using a password to secure the device. Speaking of security, there's no encryption available on the Supernote Manta right now. While this is not unusual among E-Ink devices, it's a missed opportunity for a workhorse like the A5X2, especially since the competition in form of the reMarkable Paper Pro now includes hardware encryption. Overall performance is good, but could be better at times. Typing with the keyboard feels choppier than with the smaller Nomad, and also switching to other apps sometimes takes a couple of seconds for the device to react. I suspect the higher pixel count of the larger 300 ppi screen is to blame for that. Speaking of which, the biggest, most notable upgrade to the hardware of the A5X2 is definitely the 10.7-inch E-Ink Carta 1300 Mobius screen, with its crisp 300 ppi resolution. Mobius is the name of E-Ink's flexible display line. It's not built on a glass back plate, but on plastic, which makes the screen lighter and much more robust. So that's definitely an advantage if you're carrying around the A5X2 a lot. Contrast levels are great, and unsurprisingly the screen is among the best in the E-Ink space. Directly comparing it to the Bookscore 10.3 or Vivo's AI paper, there are only minor differences that I'd say mostly come down to typical E-Ink manufacturing tolerances. The one thing that's not so great about the display is the sometimes pretty noticeable ghosting. In case you don't know the term, when changing the contents on an E-Ink screen, some of the E-Ink particles can be stuck, which results in a faint afterimage of previous contents. This is not unusual for E-Ink, but I often found it to be more obvious on the A5X2 than on many other recent E-Ink tablets. Just turning a page in a notebook, and I can sometimes, not always, see pretty clearly what was on the previous page. The easy fix of manually refreshing the screen with a swipe up of the sidebar comes in handy, but while that removes the ghosting with the screen flicker, I found it to be a bit tiresome to having to do it a bit too often for my taste. The A5X2 does not include a Frontlight, which is a conscious decision by Rata to preserve the paper-like experience as best as possible. But it also means that you can't use the A5X2 in dimly lit rooms or in the dark without an external light source. This choice reduces the pen to E-Ink distance, resulting in a very accurate and natural writing experience. The low 20 milliseconds pen latency, which I measured with an ultra slow motion shot, further enhances the writing feel, and the textured screen protector just adds the right amount of friction for everything to come together perfectly. And thankfully, Rata has fixed the initial stickiness issue that plagued the Nomad, so the writing experience on the Supernote Manta is great from the start. Same as most others in that space, the Supernote A5X2 has Wacom pen support, so you can use any Wacom EMR stylus you like. Rata is using ceramic pen tips instead of the plastic nibs of others. The ceramic nibs are incredibly fine and don't wear down because of their hardness. To not damage the screen, the Manta has the mentioned soft touch screen protector, which gives way slightly. The company offers 4 different pen options, which might be a bit different depending on the region. The push-up pen, the Heart of Metal pen, the new clear Lamy Safari Vista pen, and the Lamy Safari Twin pen. To make a long story short, I would always pick the Heart of Metal pen. It's heavy and lies incredibly well in the hand. The new Safari Vista pen looks nice, but I can already see specks of dust through the clear plastic, so I fear this might get worse over time. It also feels too plasticky for me personally. The push-up pen adds a nice gimmick to provide a more analog experience, but it's too lightweight and rattly for my taste. And while I find the Lamy Safari Twin pen with the option to switch to a ballpoint tip incredibly cool, I'm afraid I'd use the ballpoint tip on the screen by mistake. Any one of these pens can be attached to the device with the loop on the side. That loop can be removed completely or replaced with a cuttable loop that comes in the box for other pen sizes. This clear plastic goes into the side as a dust plug if you don't want to use the loop at all. Which begs the question, how much dust will build up in the folio openings if you don't use the Half-Folio? One small downside is that the loop is pushing against the back of the device and lifting it off the desk slightly when there's a pen in there. So the rubber feet on that side don't touch the desk, reducing the grip. I also found that leaving the cap inside the loop, as I typically do on the Supernote Nomad, is a bit in the way when writing, so that can be a small issue I didn't have with the A6X2 because that one's folio is much thicker. So I have to put the pen cap somewhere else when writing. Which brings us to the software. The Supernote Manta runs Android 11, which is heavily customized for the main purpose of taking notes. So this is not your typical Android experience. There's no Google Play Store available, but after enabling the option in the settings, you can sideload apps via ADB. But even without doing so, you can download the Kindle app from within the settings. But truth be told, Android apps on here aren't a very good experience. And I wouldn't recommend getting the A5X2 if you intend to use Android on E-Ink. There aren't any options to change the E-Ink viewing modes, as it's possible with most other Android E-Ink devices, which makes using the majority of apps pretty cumbersome. But my main complaint is actually the already mentioned heavy ghosting, that I even found a bit too obvious when using something as simple as the Kindle app, for example. Even though it runs Android, the customized Supernote user interface only supports English, Chinese Simplified, Traditional, and Japanese as languages. For keyboard and handwriting recognition, there are a lot more options available though, which I'll come back to in a moment. What's great about Supernote's approach is that the software is constantly being improved and all the devices are also still updated. What I'd like to see added for cloud synchronization and device verification are EU server locations besides China, Japan, the US and the UK. But the thing I still miss most on the Supernote platform is a proper home screen. I already mentioned this in my long-term Supernote Nomad review, and I know many people disagree with me on that, but the missing home screen is simply a design flaw in my opinion. Yes, a paper notebook also doesn't have a home screen, but it can't do a lot of things that a digital note-taking tablet offers neither. And while manually creating an overview notebook with links to other important notebooks is a viable workaround, it's also evidence that a proper home screen with filtering and sorting options is painfully missing here. So the way this works is you're always inside a notebook or an app, and with the swipe down on one of the sidebars, depending on your setup as a righty or lefty, you open up the menu which serves as a hub to navigate the device. The other sidebar can be used for undoing and redoing actions, which finally brings us to the excellent note-taking features of the Supernote A5X2. Just one more thing, using the Supernote user interface for the first time takes a bit of time getting used to, because it's not your stock Android experience, and because there are a couple of unique solutions in how Redter implemented some things, there is a bit of a learning curve. It's not as steep as with the books devices, but the first few days might be a bit bumpy. Inside the notebook you have 3 different pen options, different stroke thickness options, and grayscale color options. The needlepoint pen, the ink pen, and the marker. There are additional pencil options with different hardness settings in the Atelier app, which is a separate drawing app that's not part of the note-taking app. That app also allows you to zoom in and out and move the canvas, which unfortunately is not possible in the note-taking app. But performance for those actions could definitely be better. There's pressure sensitivity, but even though the ceramic nib pens also support tilt sensitivity as well, it's not implemented software-wise on the Supernote A5X2. Before creating a note, you can select a template and between a standard note and a note with real-time handwriting recognition. That real-time recognition draws a bit more energy, and is also missing the layers otherwise available in regular notes. Even though the UI is only limited to 4 different languages, there are a lot more options for the handwriting recognition. The real-time handwriting recognition works offline directly on the device and is super handy to find something specific inside of notebooks. You can even use a global search function to look for something in all of your notebooks, which is incredibly useful. The other 2 organizational features that Redter nailed are headlines and keywords. You can select any text and convert that text to a headline or a keyword. By doing so, it's added to a table of contents or the keyword list, which is not entirely unique to the Supernote platform, but they implemented it in the best way possible, making the whole experience easy and intuitive to use once you get the hang of it. You can also add calendar events and tasks with that same workflow, and linking between other pages in a notebook or website is another great feature that lets you cross-reference contents for a better overview. So I'd say that's really the main benefit of the Supernote A5X2 over many other E-Ink note-taking tablets. It makes finding information within your notes so much easier than it's the case with many other devices on the market. Another small but nonetheless nice feature is the option to move the toolbar around. Just tap and hold it and snap it to one of the edges, or let it float somewhere on the screen where you'd like it to have. What I do miss in the note-taking app is the option to zoom in and out, and also a canvas that isn't limited to the screen's dimensions. The option to draw shapes like it's possible on other devices would also be nice to have. You can sync your notes either to the Supernote cloud or to Dropbox, Google Drive, or OneDrive. There are also apps for PC, Mac, Android, and iOS available to access and upload files. And there's also an easy-to-use screen sharing option available that works locally without having to use the Supernote cloud. Enable the option on the device and open the IP address in a browser on the same network. That's it. Besides the cloud synchronization options, you can also export whole notebooks or individual pages as PNG, PDF, TXT, or Word files via the cloud with a QR code that's valid for 24 hours, or just save those files locally on the device. Also very useful, you can select the folders which you'd like to have synchronized, allowing for a granular selection of things you want to have in the cloud or not. PDF functionality, on the other hand, is okay, but nothing special. There aren't any special viewing modes available like you'd find on the books devices, but the zoom with the small overview window works well nonetheless. Render quality could be better though, because once you zoom in, the PDF looks pixelated even though the vector PDF shouldn't be. But there are at least options to trim the margins and to improve contrast levels, which can be useful for certain types of PDFs. You can also annotate PDF and EPUB files directly with the same pen options as in notebooks and export the PDFs afterwards. You can also open DRM-free EPUB files and annotate them directly. But once you do, you can't change the text styling anymore. Same as with other applications, ghosting is pretty obvious here, unfortunately with no option to automatically refresh the screen after a certain amount of page turns. Battery life is a bit of a mixed bag. with a runtime of roughly 23 hours when using the Kindle app with a page turn interval of 15 seconds, it's on the lower end for an E-Ink device without a Frontlight. For comparison, you can achieve runtimes of up to 100 hours when reading on the Bookscore 10.3. When just writing, battery life isn't incredible either, but looks much better compared to the competition and comes in at around 8 to 9 hours with one charge, depending on the features you're using, like the real-time text recognition. I kept the no-load shutdown power saving mode enabled, which sends the device into hibernate while the screen is on and there's no input. That's useful to reduce battery drain while looking at notes, but doesn't seem to have any impact on battery performance when reading or writing as mentioned. Before we wrap it up, let's also quickly talk about the price, because the A5X2 with the pen and folio has a pretty hefty price tag of over 700 euros or $600. So even though I purchased the A5X2 for my channel, I honestly had to think twice before committing to the order, because that's a lot of money for a highly specialized sub 11-inch black and white ink device without a Frontlight. When checking out the competition, there's the reMarkable Paper Pro, for example, which you can get for a similar price of 750 euros with the standard pen and the cheapest folio. Sure, that's also very expensive, but you get the much higher quality Apple-like build with the metal frame, the textured front glass, and a custom E-Ink Gallery 3 color screen with a Frontlight. How these two devices are so close in terms of pricing is a bit of a head scratcher if you ask me. And there is also the Bookscore 10.3, which is not too far behind the Supernote Manta in its main note-taking functionality, and actually much better for everything related to Android. And to top it off, it's almost half the price, 420 euros or $380 with the folio and pen. That's an incredibly large price difference that I also find hard to wrap my head around. So in terms of value for money, the Supernote A5X2, even though it's an incredible note taker, is a tough sell, to be honest. Which brings us to the conclusion of this review, and all in all, there's no question about it. The Supernote A5X2 delivers an exceptional power user-focused note-taking experience that's hard to find somewhere else. On the one hand, you get outstanding organizational tools for note-taking, a robust 300 ppi E-Ink Carta 1300 Mobius screen, and that ceramic-tipped pen combined with the self-healing screen protector and low pen latency for a nice natural paper-like experience. The note-taking process that is constantly being updated with new and improved features is so well thought out that other companies still haven't caught up yet. But on the other hand, even though it's running Android 11, you will quickly notice that the app experience doesn't hold a candle to what you get on the competitors. And some smaller details like the missing home screen, the pen holder being in the way at times, and the potential useless rubber feet with the Half-Folio opened aren't as well thought out as they could be. The somewhat more noticeable ghosting might also be off-putting to some. And at the mentioned price point, you need to be willing to pay extra compared to what's on the market otherwise. If price isn't a concern and you want the most uncompromising note-taking experience possible, the A5X2 definitely delivers. But if you're on a budget or might have an issue with the screen's ghosting, maybe even prefer to have a Frontlight or intend to make the most of Android apps on E-Ink, you might want to look at other devices. What do you think? Is the price a deal breaker, or is the Supernote A5X2's unique approach worth the investment? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I've got a few comparisons coming up, so if this was helpful, please like and subscribe and stay tuned for more. Thanks for your time watching, and see you in the next one.